Good afternoon and welcome to today's Tropical Atlantic Marine Weather Briefing. My name is Amanda Reinhart and I'll be talking about what's currently happening today and what to expect through the weekend and into early next week. We currently have two Atlantic Ocean swell events that we're expecting, and one is currently ongoing. The first one, we're seeing 12 to 15-foot seas in northwest swell in the central Atlantic, and that's going to be ongoing through Friday morning. And I'll show exactly where that is in the upcoming slides. We're also expecting another swell event to occur with 12 to 17-foot seas and long period northwest swell, and that one's going to be further east than the ongoing event, and that's going to happen Saturday through at least Tuesday. Let's take a look at this morning's surface analysis. So you can see we've got two main boundaries in our on our analysis. So we've got this cold front in the central Atlantic, and that's the one that's generating the ongoing swell. And then we also have this cold front in the central Atlantic, but it's stretching back into the Gulf of Mexico, where we see this low pressure system in the central Gulf. So we'll take a look at the wind and wave forecast through this weekend and into early next week, and then what to expect. So you've got that cold front in the central Atlantic that's still going to be expected to push eastward, and then this is the subsiding swell associated with that system. There's still going to be 8 to 12-foot seas by Friday morning at 7 a.m., but the 12-foot seas will subside through Friday morning. And then we've got this next cold front in the western Atlantic with the fresh to strong winds with 8 to 11-foot seas. And then we have moderate to fresh winds across the tropical Atlantic and into the central Caribbean with 8-foot seas in the tropical Atlantic and 8 to 9-foot seas in the central Caribbean. So by Saturday, we've got that cold front still moving across the central Atlantic with those fresh to strong winds associated with it. And then here comes that next swell event with 8 to 12-foot seas, with the 12-foot seas beginning to come into our forecast waters. And then we've got moderate to fresh winds across the tropical Atlantic with 8 to 9-foot seas. And then we've got fresh to strong winds across the central Caribbean with 8 to 9-foot seas. And then just to point out, there is a cold front that's beginning to move across the Gulf of Mexico by Saturday morning. And then the reason I pointed that out is because by Sunday, we've got that cold front stretching pretty much moving off the northeast Florida coast and stretching back into the Gulf of Mexico. And we've got fresh to strong winds ahead and behind the front, both in the western Atlantic and across the northwest Gulf. And then we've got 8-foot seas associated with that. So then we have that cold front that was in the central Atlantic, still in our waters with the 8 to 12-foot seas associated with it. And then we've got moderate to fresh winds across the tropical Atlantic with those 8 to 9-foot seas, and they are impacting the Lesser Antilles. And then we also have fresh to strong winds across the central Caribbean with 8 to 10-foot seas. And then by Monday, we've got that the cold front that is, moving across the Bahamas and likely across the northwest Caribbean. And you have mostly fresh to strong winds behind the front, especially in the Gulf of Mexico, with like widespread 8 to 11-foot seas. And then some moderate to fresh winds off the Florida coast with 8-foot seas associated with that. And then in the central Caribbean, central Atlantic, we've got that lingering boundary that we had been tracking the last few days. And then we've got the 12 to 18-foot seas associated with that system still moving across the central Atlantic. And then we got the moderate to fresh winds across the tropical Atlantic with 8 to 10-foot seas really bumping up against the Lesser Antilles. And then fresh to strong winds across the central Caribbean with 8-foot seas. And then finally, rounding out our forecast period on Tuesday, we had that cold front still moving eastward across the western and into the central Atlantic and stretching into the northwest Caribbean. And then we have another system potentially setting up in the Gulf of Mexico, where you have some widespread fresh to strong winds, and then building seas 8 to 12 feet. We've got moderate to fresh winds still occurring behind the cold front, but seas are going to be below 8 feet. And then that cold front that had been moving across the central Atlantic, that boundary will likely have weakened, but the swell remains with 12 to 14 foot seas. And then we've got fresh to locally strong winds across the tropical Atlantic with 8 to 10 foot seas. And then we've got the fresh to strong winds across the central and eastern Caribbean with 8 to 10 foot seas stretching across that area. So in summary, you have the two Atlantic swell events. So 12 to 15 foot seas are ongoing right now through Friday morning in the central Atlantic. And then we have our next Atlantic swell event that's expected a little further east than the ongoing event now, 12 to 17 foot seas in the central Atlantic Saturday through at least Tuesday. And that concludes your Tropical Atlantic Marine Weather Briefing. Our next briefing will be Sunday, January 19th by 5 p.m. Have a safe weekend, everyone.